Here we go, folks. Ba-ba-bum. Welcome, we are back. Every month, as I've said, for those people who are new, we have a theme, and all 223 chapters across the globe put on a talk, get somebody to speak on the topic of the global theme. And this month's theme, February's theme, is Divergent, and it's from a fairly neighboring community over in Valencia, just next to Barcelona in Spain. Nuria Tamarit has illustrated it beautifully. And our global partner Basecamp has sponsored it, which only leaves Lee Marples, our speaker for today, to deliver it. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand the virtual mic over to Mr. Lee Marples. Lee, take it away, my boy.
All right. Hopefully everyone can see that. So, right, a quick introduction to a bit about me then. So, I'm Lee Marples, one of the co-founders at Think3, a creative agency that set up just under 2 years ago. And we like to think that we've sort of gone from strength to strength over the last 2 years, building up our sort of local brand in the area and looking at this. So Tim approached me sort of just after Christmas, actually, looking at, okay, would I like to come and talk about Divergent? And straight away I was like, actually, I don't really know what this means. I've got strange things going on in my head around verges and all sorts of stuff. Actually, what's the first thing that anybody does when they're looking at this sort of stuff? You revert back to the dictionary. So the topic of divergent, what does it actually mean? So it means moving or extending in different directions from a common point, which then that sort of got me thinking, well, actually, how does that apply really to the creative sector? So straight away, in my head, I was going, okay, there's two parts of the brain. How does that work? And different parts are responsible for different things. So the left side of your brain, which is the logical side of things, which is probably more me, I think, than the creative side, because my background, and there's a couple of people here from Cooper Parry, I'm a qualified accountant by background. So why is an accountant talking about creativity? Strange topic, but I'm running a creative agency. So there's a balance between those two halves of the brain. The left half that sorts of your logical thought process, being rational about things, and then the right side of the brain, which is the creative side of things. That's the side of the brain that looks at how can you solve problems in a creative way, looking at how can you visualize things in 3D format, which then led me to think around, well, actually, in the context of what does divergent actually means in a creative sense, it's for us as creatives, it's about solving problems for people. That's what we're trying to do. So whether you are a marketing agency that's looking at trying to extend your reach or sell a service or a product, we're all about trying to solve a problem that somebody has, which then comes on to the opposite, actually, of what today's talk about, which is divergent thinking, which is convergent thinking. So a little bit of an exercise, and this is an example for you in terms of how convergent thinking would work. If I said to you, what's the answer to this equation? 5 plus 5. Being an accountant, it's got to be numbers related for me. So pretty straightforward on that one. The answer to that's 10. It's linear, it's systematic. There's only one single right answer to that equation. And that's convergent thinking. So if I flip that on its head and we look at divergent thinking for exactly the same problem, if I change that equation and have two question marks together that equal 10, you're probably going to go, there might be 4 or 5 answers to that. Actually, it's not. There's an infinite solutions to that equation. It's not just the 1 plus 9 that you'll be thinking about, or 2 plus 8, or 3 plus 7. You've got fractions that could be included in it. There's decimals that could be included. It doesn't have one single definitive right answer, and that's divergent thinking in comparison to convergent thinking. So it's all about the infinite possibilities. And when we're sort of in the creative world that we are, this is one of the things that lots of people look at. So some of you may have seen yesterday that I posted a little preview in terms of what this is about. And here's the paperclip slide that we were looking at yesterday. To anybody who thinks more with the left side of the brain, so the logical side of things, if you give them a paperclip and ask them to come up with a number of ideas of what it could be used for, they'll probably come up with about a dozen or so. Number one, it's a paperclip. Number two, you could probably use it as a bookmark if you wanted to. Number three, which I'm sure most people have done, unbend it, use it to slot into the side of your iPhone and pop out your SIM card. It's an obvious choice of what that is. Or even cleaning your fingernails. That's something else people do with paper clips. But if you are more inclined to be a divergent thinker, you'll come up with hundreds of ways that you can use a paperclip. You could use it as a phone stand. You could use it as a support on an orchid against a sort of cane holding that to make it grow. So that's just another example really then of the difference between those two parts of the brain and how coming up with different solutions is what we're all trying to do. And linking that back to problem solving then, as creatives, what we're expected to do is creative thinking. We're told all the time that what we need to do as creatives is to imagine, we need to create, we need to inspire, we need to come up with new ideas, new solutions, new ways of doing things. So when you apply that to actually thinking through in a creative process what people are trying to achieve, you've got to be able to separate your divergent and your convergent thinking as part of a process. So when we're being creative and being divergent in our approach to coming up with solutions, no idea is a bad idea. You don't throw away any idea that you're thinking of because it could be a really good one. But what that allows you to do is allows you to then build on those ideas. And most people know, get a pen, get a piece of paper, get a whiteboard, and you start writing down all your ideas and scribbling down things that you need to do. Once you've got that list, you can then continue to build on those, and then you look for little patterns in it. And actually, what of those ideas could be combined together to actually make our problem-solving solution even better? Let yourself go wild. Think outside the box all the time. When you're divergent thinking, it's about coming up with high volumes of ideas. At this point, it's about developing quantity over quality. So let your creative juices overflow. I don't think that's necessarily a great picture because I wouldn't let any martini overflow. I enjoy my martini. It's a bit of a waste. I'd have to get a straw for that one. So it's about looking at, okay, well, how do we do that and how do we facilitate sort of creative thinking divergently? So lots of people will do this. We have bookmarks saved on a computer. We have points of reference that we always go back to. It's about looking for quick ideas and quick ways to gauge and look for inspiration in what we're doing. Now, there comes a point in that throughout that creative process where the journey ahead could look really long. You've got so many ideas that you're trying to work through that actually one of the key points of divergent thinking is knowing when to stop and when do you reach the end of your sort of ideation process, which then is looking at, okay, how do we then balance being divergent but also being convergent at the same time? Because convergent thinking is the logical, it's rational. We can't carry on forever thinking creatively. We have to deliver a solution to the problems that we're trying to solve. So some of those challenges could be, okay, how do we then become creative within a budget? A client might set the expectation that there's a time frame that we've got to achieve, or there's a limited amount of resource that we're able to do or use as part of the process. With infinite possibilities, when we're thinking divergently, where do you stop? And that you've then pulled together and what you've understood is the result of what you've been able to achieve through your divergent thinking going to achieve the right balance for the client. there's a bit of a hint here then. So this is about switching from sort of your left side switching from the right side from the creative to your left and applying that convergent thinking. So once you've been through the process of coming up with lots of brilliant ideas, the first step is to then go back and look at those and select the most creative ones. Most creative ideas are always going to be the best ones. But what you've got to actually then work out is that solution really feasible? You could come up with an idea that I want to completely transform the office that we're in. I want to rip up all the floors. I want a nice carpet. I want everything. But actually, is it feasible? Budget constraints? Probably not. So you have to apply the logical side of your brain and do some convergent thinking to narrow down those results to be which ones are going to be the most effective ones. And as part of that process, this is a great book that I think some people will know of. It's a nice short book. There's nothing over complex in it, and we've got a copy of it lying around in the office here. And it's a phrase that we've sort of used within the business since we started, really. It came along in the early days, and we said, actually, it's stealing like an artist. And the whole concept of this, when you're being creative, is everything's been done before. In reality, there is nothing new in what people are trying to achieve. So if I look at that in terms of social media, we all know how that's evolved over the last few years. It really started off back in 1997 with 6 Degrees. That was the first social media platform that started to gain traction. And what did it do? It allowed you to build a profile. It allowed you to make connections and ultimately expand your network. That quickly got replaced when MySpace came along in 2003. But again, it had the same metrics to it. You could build a profile, you could engage with connections, and you could expand your networks. Twitter in 2006, exactly the same points of principle again. 2010, Instagram comes along. They generated Instagram stories, and actually, what's that now becoming? TikTok. We've now got pretty much videos non-stop, but they're all exactly the same. So you take the concept of social media. Yes, it's evolved over that sort of 20-year time frame. It's evolved mainly because of consumers, us, people at the other end that are using it, our changes in our habits and what we are looking to achieve. We want information quick. We want it fast. Why do we sit there endlessly scrolling through TikTok? Because it's built into us actually that that's what we like to do as people. So they've built their platform around that. But take the basics of what it is. You have a profile, you connect with people, you expand your network. Nothing's changed in that. And social media isn't the only place that that's happened. Pre-social media and pre-internet taking off in the big world, we had newspapers. Newspapers had classified adverts in them. What were they fundamentally? That was a profile for a business. So the whole concept of stealing like an artist, when you apply that in the world of social media and advertising, it's all been done before. There's nothing new. All people are doing is they're taking the ideas that have been done once before, building on them and creating something better and reacting to what the general public are looking for. So what you have to become as part of your divergent and your convergent thinking is ultimately you have to be commercially creative. And this is a concept that we as a business have sort of invoked throughout what we do. And this is where I can sit there and go, okay, well, I said at the beginning, I'm an accountant by trade. That's what I understand. That's what I do. So actually, I sit towards the commercial side of this little sentence. The creative side is actually delivered by the other partners at the business. That's what they do. They're creative in nature. They think more with the right-hand side of the brain than the left-hand side of the brain. I think more with the left. And together, actually, between the three of us, we have a working brain function that achieves great things. So when you're looking at problem solving commercially, you have to then look at, okay, how can we do that? And here's a bit of a 3-stage process, which is the sort of thing that we would go through and I think about. So number one, what is our brief from our client? What is the problem that we are trying to solve for them? If a client is looking for a new website, What is it that they're trying to achieve? Is it that they need more visibility? Is it the fact that they don't have one? Is it the fact that their current one doesn't actually work? If we're trying to look at social media engagement and traction, what again are they trying to achieve? What problem are we solving? Maybe they're not getting enough audience share. Maybe from a brand perspective, it's not actually conveyed in the way that their business is. So how can we do that? What are we trying to solve for them? And then stage 2 is we'll then going away and thinking divergently, and what can we do creatively to meet that brief? Lots of ideas flying around. And then finally, the third point is, how does our creativity and our thinking impact on our client commercially? Are those results feasible? Does it achieve what we're trying to deliver for them? And what that actually really comes down to, it's all about the money. Fundamentally, anybody doing business, whether that's on a sort of B2C model or a B2B model, it all comes down to the cold hard cash. Are our creative solutions feasible within the budget and the scope and the time frame that they're trying to work to? And it isn't always yes, that's how it works. But at the same time, what are they trying to do? They're trying to build their business. They're trying to expand on it. They're looking for ways that they can ultimately generate more money themselves as a business. So being commercially creative, balancing your divergent thinking and your convergent thinking is about coming up with commercial solutions in a creative way. That's what we're all trying to achieve. And you can only do that really through understanding. And what that means is that you've got to get under the skin of your client. You've got to understand how they operate, the sectors that they're operating in. You've got to understand what their objectives are, not just from a commercial aspect, but this is thinking more in terms of the creative side of things and balancing those two together. What data can a client give you that's going to help you in that process of thinking creatively? And applying that data with some logic, can you then come back with a commercial solution that is still creative at heart? So ask the client, what are we trying to do? What's the use of your product, your service, and what does it do? That's what we need to understand. By understanding the client, you can actually make more commercially creative solutions that are going to deliver results. So there's a hint there about actually what else can you do at the same time? And that's, don't lose sight of the end goal. Whether that's a website, whether that's PR, whether that's brand, whether that's actually you're creative with your hands and you're making a product to sell. What is the end goal that you're trying to achieve? You've got to understand the risks associated with it. Is it time? Is it budget? Is it reputation? Is it the fact that actually you can't get all the information that you need to and you're working blind in some spaces? You've got to be able to understand and assess those risks and apply that as part of your thinking process. Know your client inside out. Do the research. If they're a brand new client, go away and find somebody else that's in the same sector. Or is there somebody else out there that's doing the same thing that they're doing? Who are their competitors? Look at how their business makes money, because that's what they are in the game to do. And once you understand how their business operates, you've got the commercial thinking. And remember the big picture. It's ultimately about bridging the gap between creativity and business. And this is a sentence that we've used since we started Think 3 as a business. There's a couple of books that I've read, and if anybody wants those details, I can send them to you, which actually is about, from a creative aspect, being more commercial, because there are infinite possibilities. There are infinite solutions when we think divergently, but we have to hone that in to something that's rational and something that's logical, that's going to ultimately bridge that gap between creativity and business. And with that, I get to sort of the end. Here's a couple of social media links for me. I am all over LinkedIn, as probably some people will have seen. I am forever tapping away on my phone and putting content out there with all sorts of stuff. And with that, thank you very much for listening to this morning's talk on Divergent.
Well, thank you very much. Goodbye. I'll be here for 10 minutes or so if you want to hang around, chit chat. But thank you very much, everybody.